So, yesterday was my last day at Twitch. I chose to leave. I voluntarily resigned, but I did it without having any offers lined up. No leads or anything like that, which feels kind of scary, not knowing what's going to be on the other side. And I'm also feeling genuinely sad to be leaving, but it's like a self induced sadness, right? But I also feel relieved and excited, and I wanted to document this because it's a different chapter in my life. But I also think that a lot of people in tech are thinking about leaving. So I wanted to show what it's like on the other side, or at least my thoughts going into it. And I think a lot of us are burnt out. Like we're just hanging on and making the best of it, or we're just like waiting to get laid off or something. And it's really hard to talk about these things publicly when you're still in it. So, I'm here talking about it on behalf of the people who want to, but can't. And I'll go into what the factors were in my leaving my job and the trade offs, what alternatives I considered, and ultimately what I'm looking forward to. So, why did I actually leave? It wasn't just one thing, right? It was a buildup of a lot of things. And there wasn't just one moment where I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm going to leave. So the first reason is just the burnout from the general state of the tech industry. As most of us know, for the past few years, big tech has had mass layoffs every single year. And every time it happens, some really amazing people get let go. People you work with, people you respected, and were just supposed to move on because it's just work. And those of us left behind at these companies who have witnessed the layoffs have like trauma bonding over it at this point. And this year, I think more so than other years, I just feel like there's just this immense pressure from the top to work harder or more or whatever. And I've been with Twitch for almost 10 years. And let me just say, we've always had pressure to trim timelines and ruthlessly prioritize and deliver more. But this year it just feels different. And maybe it's just me. Maybe it's because of AI. Maybe it's because, we're trying to do more and work through all this while the world feels like it's just on fire. Who knows? But it feels like timelines are getting tighter and the pressure is just constant, all the while just having looming possible layoffs over our heads, right? And this is just the general vibe in big tech right now. And it's mentally exhausting. And then there's the AI stuff. If you've read any of my previous posts on LinkedIn or my personal blog, you know that I have a lot of conflicting feelings about AI. And I joke about hating it, yet at the same time, I'm like writing tips and tricks. And I use AI every day. I think it's like super useful, but it's exhausting. And at Twitch, I was one of the early adopters of AI, and I volunteered as a Gen AI champion. I helped run its office hours. I taught teammates, and I tried to help scale what we were doing with AI. And the reason why I cared about AI adoption at Twitch since like the beginning of last year is because, I kind of saw the writing on the wall, right? The people who don't leverage it are going to get left behind somehow. And regardless of the job role, I knew that it would be a transferable skill that would be necessary to have in this future job market. So I treated it like that. I spent a lot of time outside of work to learn Claude Code and Codex and learn about how other people across the industry was using it. And I wanted to bring people alongside me who were curious about how to leverage AI for work. And I tried to be practical about it. And nobody told me I had to do this, and it wasn't part of my day job. But I wanted to do more for myself with AI, not because anyone was forcing me to use it or anything like that, but because 2 years ago, I just figured AI would be a game changer. And there's a lot of other talented and passionate people at Twitch who care about this stuff, who also thought this, and I loved collaborating with them. But I think the thing that started wearing on me was that AI also accelerates the feeling that work never ends and there's so much more to do. And because AI enables you to write faster and code faster and analyze faster, I think instead of doing the same amount of work in less time, we're all just doing more within the time that we do have. So, on top of that, there's all this like AI slop that you now have to review or figure out how to make not AI sloppy. And ultimately, I think AI made me think a lot about a lot of different things, but some of the things that I value most don't scale very well or isn't just about acceleration, right? Such as like connecting with other people, understanding how things work. And I think part of this break is me figuring out what role I want AI to play in my life versus what I think should stay human. And I'll talk a little bit more about what I want to get out of break in a bit. But the final reason why I quit is because of personal reasons. I'm a tired mom, and I just really lost track of my physical health over the past couple of years. And right now, I don't have the time like I had before to study for interviews. The time I do have is low energy, and I feel like anyone with young kids can relate. And if you did interview me in the last 2 years, I swear I could have done it better if I just had more sleep. I think one of the worst mistakes I made was scheduling an interview a few months postpartum. Sorry, Anthropic. I thought I would have my brain back by then, but I clearly did not. So yeah, the reason why I quit was a lot of different things. It's a combination of the things I just said, on top of all the normal paper cuts that we all kind of have at work. So let's talk about the alternatives I considered. Before I went through with the decision to quit, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't leaving anything on the table. So I asked myself, okay, what are the alternatives? There's 3 that I identified. The first option was just to wait. Wait for another round of layoffs and hope I get picked, I guess. I don't know. But I survived like at least 5 RIFs or reduction in force at this point, and waiting indefinitely just was not appealing to me. The second option was just to keep going, and it's kind of like waiting, but just making the most of what I had. And Twitch is like genuinely a great place to work. And, I'd always tell people, you get out of it what you put into it. And that's true. I put a lot into Twitch, and I think I did get a lot out of it. And from the outside, some of my friends felt like I had a prestigious job, and they're not wrong. I love my staff badge, the recognition of the Twitch brand. I love working in a gaming related company, and there's just so many perks here that you really can't find anywhere else anymore. And I really felt like I found my calling in trust and safety because it aligns with my personal values. And, that's what kept me going for the past 4 to 5 years on the safety machine learning team. But for all the reasons I just mentioned, everything was just still taking a toll on me. And then the final option I considered was to find another role. I've had 4 other roles while I've been at Twitch, so this was like the most familiar for me, right? But internally, we haven't really hired TPMs in the last couple of years, at least that I can remember, so that door felt pretty closed. I could have looked into a different type of role, or even a role at Amazon, but do I really want to work at Amazon? I don't know. And externally, well, I couldn't get myself to be excited enough about another role somewhere else to want to try to spend time investing in interview prep. So when I laid it all out, none of the alternatives felt right. And, that's kind of like when I knew. But everything in life is a trade-off. The grass is always greener. So let me get into the risks I'm actually accepting right now. And there's 2 that I can think of off the top of my head. So the first is the financial stuff, right? I'm not independently wealthy, but I also don't have any debt. My school loans are paid off. I've been in tech for a long time, and I've saved up enough to have some financial runway. Not like fire runway, financial independence, retire early money, but enough to take some intentional time off and still have something safe for emergencies. And I know that being able to make a decision like this is a privilege, because there was a point in my life when I was younger and early on in my career where I struggled to pay my bills. And younger me would probably think that this is an irresponsible decision that I'm about to make. But an older me would regret never taking the chance on myself when I finally have the ability to. But I have aging parents that I support and a family of my own. So without a full-time job, I am accepting some amount of financial risk. But the bigger risk that I see is that I have no idea what technical program manager jobs are going to look like in the next several months or in a year, or if they're even going to exist in the same way. I think that they will, because if frontier AI model companies are still hiring TPMs, I'll take that as a sign that TPMs will still be needed. But in what capacity? Will I still be hireable after a gap? Will I be able to catch up? Or will I get relegated to some kind of permanent underclass of people who stepped away at the wrong moment? I really don't know. But staying in tech also feels like a risk, disguised as stability. Because who knows what any of our jobs in tech is going to be like in the next few months. But at least for now, I'm okay with accepting these risks and pushing myself to grow on my own terms. So what do I want to get out of break? And what does success look like for me? And what is the failure state? Well, there's three main things I want to get out of my break. The first thing is that I need some rest, right? But I'm not the kind of person who's capable of doing nothing for very long. So when I say rest, I don't mean just stay in bed. I mean like get back into physical therapy and strength training. And I've always been someone who has like side projects, hobbies, and ideas and things I want to learn. So that brings me to my second thing that I really want to get out of break, which is basically to do what I've always wanted to do and go full steam into my creative hobbies just for the pure enjoyment of it. I used to have so many hobbies, but they all kind of fell to the wayside and I felt like I was just becoming a shadow of myself. And I'm not going to reveal exactly which hobbies I'm going to go into, but I'm going to try to document the process. I was considering getting into all of them, but I don't have infinite time and infinite resources. So I just decided to focus on one thing that's an ambitious project for me. And this isn't about having fun. It's about doing something where the value comes from the fact that a human made it. And I just want to do that through learning a craft and making something with my own hands. And the third goal I have for my break is, ironically, to continue to build with AI, but do it to help with the logistics of my own life instead of trying to create shareholder value. I actually had used AI to help me get set up for my career break. And I'm not just talking about like chatting with AI. I'm talking about like setting up a routine with Claude Code that sends me a morning briefing every morning on what I should focus on based upon my goals and calendar and to-do list. Maybe I'll do a deep dive on that in the future. I don't know. But in terms of what success looks like for me, figuring out how to build healthy habits around my schedule as a mom would be amazing. But also figuring out how I can make my personal life easier with AI would be fantastic. And lastly, I don't necessarily expect to make money off of my hobbies, but I think the ultimate success for me is being able to look back on this period of my life and being able to say, I was the author of this time and having something to show for it at the end. And the failure state for me, I think I'd have failed this experiment if I just waste my time on social media, consuming more than I create. I have some mitigations for that risk, but you never know. Like, what if I get sick and bedridden for a month and it's really hard to get back into the swing of things? I mean, we'll see. But if you have any tips for me on that, just let me know. But yeah, realistically, I will need to start looking for a job in several months unless an offer comes along sooner than that. I'm going to need that income to fund my hobbies, especially if I want to stick with them. So yeah, I have a plan and success criteria and a failure state, but it's only been one day and I don't know how things are going to turn out. What I do know is that the things I'm building over the next few months are just going to be things that I choose for myself. And at least I know exactly why I left and what I'm risking and what I'm hoping for. And I'm not sure if I'm going to make another video, but at the very least, I'll have this one as a part of this journey I'm about to embark on. Thanks for listening.